Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my Bust Your Bias episode today on myths regarding disability. Um, before I pass the mic to Sai, who is going to host this session. I'll also introduce our panelists today. I'd like to tell you a few words about Belong and why we're doing this. So Belong is a platform, social platform that promotes diversity and inclusion in cities, societies, and organizations. And we do this uh, through a pretty community-centric approach and service-oriented approach. So we have several services and community engagement activities. We have inclusive housing service, which looks at providing more inclusive housing services to people who face discrimination based on their identity while seeking housing. We have a mental health collective, which also looks at inclusive mental health and how we can make mental health more accessible to people who are, again, discriminated against based on their identity. We have a book club which looks at spreading the word about diversity and inclusion, promoting it and celebrating it through literature and books and cultural spaces in general. We are also having our first Belong Online Literature Festival that's happening next Friday, 3rd July to 4th, 6th July. I'm just going to leave the link of the festival here in the chat box if anybody wants to get your passes and look at the speakers. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, so you should definitely come. Uh, also, we also have a research collective and a brands collective. Belong. That's what Belong is doing, and also we do Bust Your Bias to talk about the issue of diversity and inclusion and identity itself, right? Like what we are using many platforms to do something about it, but talking and spreading awareness would be step one. So we use Bust Your Bias is one of our platforms that actually does this. And Sai, my colleague, is going to tell you more about Bust Your Bias and also introduce our amazing panelists, Mansoor, Afzal, and Aziz today. Thank you so much for joining, all three of you. Sai, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lasya. Okay, so I will get right into what Bust Your Bias is. Bust Your Bias basically aims at inviting facilitators from communities that usually face discrimination and biases against them, and then address a series of 6 to 7 myths that will be addressed primarily by the facilitators. This week, we are going to address our 6th episode of Bust Your Bias, and it will be on myths on disability. The speakers that we have this week are a completely amazing set of speakers personally, and I find them very inspirational for myself. I'll just introduce them right now. So Aziz Minat is based in Ahmedabad. He allegedly is a concerned citizen. His interest is in accessibility and intercommunal exchanges and communal harmony. Next, we have Afzal Afridi, who's a PhD scholar at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. He loves traveling and is a state-level cricket player. We have Mansoor Ali, who is currently working as a program coordinator in Save the Children at Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu and is a motivational speaker. He's completed his post-graduation in social work and disability studies and action from Tata Institute, Mumbai, and graduation in sociology from Farooq College, Kazikode, Kerala. So thank you so much, all of you, for attending this week's Bust Your Bias. We will get right into the myths of on disability that we are going to be discussing this week. I'm going to share my screen now to talk about the first myth, and then I'll hand it over to the facilitators. So the first myth that we'll be addressing today is people with disability are Divyang. I'm going to go according to the order that we had initially, and maybe ask Afzal to share a little bit to start with, or whoever wants to start with.
Okay, so Divyang is basically, what does Divyang means is someone is having Divya Ang. Divya is divine and Ang is a part, right? So Divyang is some kind of deification of persons with disability. It also somehow glorifies them. Personally, if I consider this word as escape from the responsibility of uh, the responsibility towards persons with disability as a society. I would like to, for example, if the deification is that to an extent that nowadays, like if you call someone as a Divyang, so by default, that the one thing will come in our mind is that that chap has the chap is having some divine body part, and they don't need some sort of, they don't need any kind of yeah. So it's like that. So Divyang is it's just like see. It's just a connotation which could have been like, it's just a few connotations given to persons with disabilities. I think my fellow panelists will throw more light on it, yeah, how it is.
Okay, thank you, Aziz.
Hi, thank you, Aziz. And so I would like to add on to what Aziz has just mentioned about the terminology, Divyang, actually. So if you see, as Aziz clearly mentioned, actually, the term usage of Divyang, actually, it clearly discriminates persons with disabilities, actually, because it segregates them from the so-called normal or the mainstream society. And if you see the history of India or the cultural background, actually, there is a doctrine of karma, which says persons with disability having disability currently they are having disability because they have committed some sin in their past. So this is our cultural background or belief about disability. And then comes there, you have to understand the Divyang discussion, actually. So again, Divyang says that they have some divine power. So in both the ways, it is not considering persons with disabilities as a so-called normal human being in the society. Either it glorify them or it sympathize, or it gives a negative shade to persons with disabilities, actually. And also there again, so even when we are using these terms like Divyang and all, you really have to see the situation of persons with disabilities in India. The unemployment rate among persons with disabilities very high. It's around 60 to 70% in India. Educational backwardness is also very high, and it is higher than the able-bodied population in India. And again, if you see the accessibility, persons with disabilities face a lot of accessibility challenges in our mainstream society, public places, schools, employment places, and everywhere. And it is even there in other areas related to personal life, marriage, their relations, their education, everywhere it is there. And then you have to see, recently we have one Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act passed in India in 2016, which is talking about lots of rights of persons with disabilities, and which is entitled to us. But still, that act passed in 2016, but now we are in 2020, but still the act, there is a lot of delay in implementing the act. So we really have to think, do we have to focus on making the terminologies like this discriminating terminologies, or do we have to really do some provide some social welfare to persons with disabilities in order to protect their rights? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Afzal. Mansoor, do you want to add in?
Yeah, I adding to Afzal, what about divine from us? The reality is we having limitation. First, you have to accept that limitation, and you have to work on that. Without addressing the discrimination, stigma, and everything, you just replacing or changing the word about Divyang or anything like that. Nothing divine about us. The reality is we have the limitation. You should recognize that. Then you have to work according to that. Otherwise, you just calling us like a Divyang or something, glorifying that doesn't make change. So that's not accept, not the way of our improvement or the right way to address this. This is one thing I want to do. The second thing is everything is connecting to religion. For example, Divyang, actually what they mean is when they calling Divyang, then okay, we need to treat them. So we are just a service receiver. So we just treating them and attaining some salvation through that. That's the kind of belief behind this kind of the terms and everything. So first we need to address stigma and address social barriers, cultural background. We need to address that. Then you do first that. Then accept as we are. That's one I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mansoor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for putting those points across. It is so true that when we try to change terminology and don't change perspective, it doesn't really have any effect, right? So, what is necessary is to also not either create a functionality out of disability, neither treat it like some sort of how do you call it, not express sympathy as much as try to reduce stigma. I think that becomes extremely important, as Mansoor added. So yeah, with that, thank you so much, all three panelists. This myth is busted. This myth does not exist. And the point is, by calling people Divyang, the kind of connotations that are attached to that, we need to be very cognizant of. It is not just about terminology, but it is also about self-assertion and how people with disability are asserting themselves, instead of how the government is trying to look at them. So the next myth that we will be addressing over here is that people with disability have other heightened senses. So Aziz, I'm again going to give the mic to you to start with, and then the others can follow.
See, basically, let me come with some conspiracy theory. I thought it is mine, but it's not actually the conspiracy theory, which is actually researched. You can find the same on Science Daily 2017 issue by Mary Batts. See, your body is like your brain is rewired when one of your senses is not working, right? So let me give a mathematics. For example, our body is having five senses, right? Hearing, hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling, right? For example, see, if one of your senses is not working, right? One of your senses is not working. So before that, your brain was giving 20% to each of your senses. But now one of your senses is not working, so 20% is left because you're visually challenged. So 20%, which was supposed to be given to vision, is no longer there, right? So it is divided. That is what I think of. It is divided according to this tasting and hearing and all this stuff. It's not a sixth sense; it's a compulsion also, right? We don't have other option to survive. If we are visually challenged, then we have to sharpen our hearing skills and smelling stuff and all, because otherwise we'll be doomed. And we don't have other option as well. So it's not about heightened sense, it's about compulsion, I would say. Like, it's compulsion for us. We don't have any other option, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Aziz. Afzal?
As you already mentioned about the brain neuroplasticity and all, and now when it comes to our experiences, I would like to bring something. So when I am a person with visual impairment and I use mobile phone and computer using my screen reader software, and it's been almost 11 years I am using it, and I have already mastered that skills to hear this screen reader voices and use my computer. Even if the screen reader speed is very high, when other people see it and they are like, oh, you are so intelligent and you are so brilliant, and you have some extra skills that you are able to listen to the speed of the screen reader software and use it. So basically, first of all, and also again, when it comes to the mobile phone operating and all, again, in that also they have this notion. So there I would like to connect it. As I earlier mentioned, actually, society have always created a stereotype about persons with disabilities. One thing about in this example is that persons with disabilities cannot do anything independently, and especially so they cannot expect a person with a disability using mobile phone, computers, and other things like a able-bodied person. I mean, a person with visual impairment cannot use it like a able-bodied person. This is what the expectation of the society. But when I am using it, they see that, oh, I am performing beyond their expectation. So the expectation is the problem, actually. So I am able to use these technology devices and all because of the support I received, and also because of my practice. I was keeping on practicing since last 10-11 years, and that is why I am able to do this. And there is no heightened sense in that. This is only because of my practice, and this is my need to survive, right? So in order to survive in this new era of technology and all, I have to do it, actually. So that's how I practice it. And again, also here you will have to see another thing, actually. People have an attitude. Usually people come and give me a shake hand, and they want me to recognize them by touching their hand. So I find it very funny as well as it is very harassing also. Right? How can a person, because it's a generalizing notion that a person with visual impairment can touch someone and recognize them, or smell someone and recognize them. But it is not the case of everybody. Somebody would be, might be doing that, but in my case, I cannot do it. Even I find it difficult to recognize the currency by touching the currency and all. And even if I have some kind of that extra senses and all, then I will be like the most successful person in the world actually. Yeah, like I will cross all the billionaires and all in the world. But this is what my practice, in order to survive, I am using all these things. And also the touching and recognizing person thing is a like very harassing thing which we are facing in a daily life actually. And one more thing I would like to add actually, the some people who is living, who do not have access to these resources like this technology and training, mobility training, all those things, they might not be able to perform like a person who is having all these privileges actually. So in my case, I have access to these things, I am able to use it. And there would be some persons with disabilities who do not have this and they may not be able to perform like me. There you cannot compare any person with a disability with anybody, because we all live in a different social situation and these things influence a lot. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Afzal. Mansoor, do you want to come in?
Yeah, actually, I fully agree with Afsal and Aziz, because whatever point I wish to say, Afsal already mentioned that. Everything depends upon how we practice it, how we getting the environment. Because like earlier, when I have interaction with Afsal and other visually impaired people, I also wondered how these people are watching movies, and I'm very wonder where after that I engaging with them, I understood their continuous effort, the technology they were using, everything is helping them. This is not about any other sense or superhuman, because everything is dependent on how we getting the technology accesses, how we practicing. That's what every depend on that. I think that there is no kind of we don't need any superhuman power or something artificial like that. Just accept as we are, giving some kind of background, technology support, then we will grow. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
And can I just add one more point to it actually?
Yes, please do.
The movies and the literature and all we have has a lot to do with this kind of stereotyping actually. If you see the movie Kabil actually, one of my friend who started beating me and running away, expecting that I will recognize him, and he did this after watching the movie Kabil, because he thought that all the persons with visual impairment will have some kind of a sixth sense to understand persons, and if somebody is coming to attack them, they will recognize them using their sixth sense. It's not actually. So this kind of misunderstanding is highly propagated through our movies and all. So the perspective change needs to happen.
Exactly.
So also in one of the character in Mahabharata, so Dhritarashtra is shown as the chap is able to recognize the people on the basis of their footprints. That आहट सुन के पहचान लेता है. See, it may be the case, but it's not the case always. Like, I'm not denying it. It's not the possibility, but it's not the case always, right? You know, 5 साल के बाद, 5 years after, somebody wants me like, hey Aziz, how are you? And I was like, हाँ, लेकिन I didn't recognize you. अबे 5 साल पहले अपने साथ में थे, but I was like, yeah, but I can forget your voice. Because you also forget the faces, right?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. You also forget the faces. Because after 5 years, if I haven't seen the person, like you also forget the faces, and I also forget the faces. If you can forget the faces, then why should I not be allowed to forget the voices, right?
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you so much, all of you. Actually, I think multiple myths have been busted in this one myth. But ideally, I think the underlying point is that you cannot generalize the experience of disability among anyone.
Yeah.
Everybody has a unique experience of how they cope with either of disability. And we should not assume anything to be a generic rule when it comes to any person, because accessibility are dependent on social situations, are dependent on the kind of social locations that one comes from, etc. as well. So yeah, thank you so much for that. This myth is busted. The next myth that we will be addressing is that people with disability are completely dependent on others.
Actually, fully dependent, because I just want, a few years ago when we taken train ticket, we uh, we can only get this concession ticket with escort. The Indian Railway providing concession ticket. If we having escort, then only they providing ticket, the concession ticket. This means they already assumed that we can alone travel. We need outside support. But fortunately, last few years we were able to get single ticket. When I'm going alone, I can take a single ticket in concession format, in concession in that. Okay, so that's a one progressive change I wish to mention here. So this is one I want to show that everyone or government, everyone saying we need extra support or we are dependent. Yes, we need assistance. So deciding to support me or just ask to me. So then if I need, I will ask. I have this kind of limitation, so I need this support. But don't asking me for that. You are fully dependent, and so this is the one thing. I just want to explain one my experience when I was in Mumbai doing my field work. I went to one hotel for food. So one lady came to me with it's a supplier and came to me, and when I she watching when I eat it, she's watching. Then she asked to me, "Can I feed you?" So I said, "That's the assumption. I, I can't alone eat the food." So I said, "No. If you give me a spoon, I can have it." So this is everything kind of assumption or the culture we already learned that. So okay, the dependency or assistance we need sometime. That time we will ask, we will inform. Or when you going to help someone, just ask, can I help you? Then they will reply. If they are required, you can provide your help. This one I want to add. I hope Axel and Aziz can add more things.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you,
thank
Manju.
you.
And so I would like to add on this discussion actually. So like we have our myth that persons with disabilities are completely dependent actually. So I would like to start with one experience. Okay. So I am a person with visual impairment. So if I am going somewhere with any of my friends or somebody, or like maybe going for a function, marriage function or something, when people see and when they understand that I am a person with visual impairment, they start asking question to my friend that Arey, what happened to him. In front of me they would ask my friend what happened to him, can't he see what
Exactly.
exactly happened and all, as if I cannot speak, right? So if they have any questions about me, if any persons have anything related to my life, they should ask me directly, right? So all this attitude comes from the notion that we are like persons with disabilities are completely depending on others. So that we have to understand very clearly that being a person with visual impairment, I don't have any issue to talk about my disability, and I'm free to talk to any people. And this is what people have to do it. If you find a person with a disability and if you want to know about them, really if you want to genuinely know about them, just ask them. You should not ask to anybody else on
Yes.
presence of them. And other thing, again, so the dependency thing is very much misunderstood also the society because of this same myth which they believe. So usually once I was walking through a beach in Kerala. I was walking with one of my friend. She and I was walking. Then suddenly a media person, he was conducting some show, and he suddenly came in front of us and started asking about some opinion about some government policy or something. Suddenly he got to know that I am a person with visual impairment. Then instead of focusing on his TV show, he started giving compliment to my friend that Are, you are doing so great thing, you are so nice person, you are helping him. Then we both criticize him, we both ask him that who told you that she is helping me, because we are friends, can't we walk together? Why do you think that she is helping me? Being a person with visual impairment, am I not allowed to what like gather with my friends and go outing with my friends, or like am I allowed not to have any dating or something like so? This thing, right? So all this comes from the notion that persons with disabilities are completely dependent, and like if they are seen with somebody else, it is obvious that they are taking help of others. And just one more thing. Once one of my friend with visual impairment who was standing outside a theater, okay, near the road, and one person came without asking him. He thought that my friend want to cross the road, and he directly came and took my friend in his hand. Actually, literally, he carry him and he crossed the road without asking him. And then my friend asked him, why did you do this? Then he's like, Arey, don't you want to cross the road? Then he is asking. So this is the societal attitude. So we really want to burst this myth actually. So there is a lot of harassment happening on based on this myth. Thank you.
See, this world depends on mutual support, right? Am I audible, right? I guess I am, because anyway.
You are.
Yeah. So this world is depends on a very mutual support and system, which we depend on each other, right? For example, if some non-disabled friend are asking some routes on the roads, I'm talking before the Google Maps scenario, huh? So you also take the help of someone. I'm not saying that we don't need assistance, because if we are going in some unknown places, we need assistance. And some of our friends are also like must be knowing that if I'm attending some wedding, obviously I'm not very comfortable with dealing with buffet and all this. So I need some help. I need some help. Even those who are having cerebral palsy need some help in terms of feeding themselves sometimes. It's not that they are not completely dependent, but it's mutual support, right? Yes, support should not be called dependence, right? I'm of that opinion. If you ask for the route, if this is called assistance, then why am I asking for the help to cross the road, or describe the scenario, or helping me to serve the place can be termed as dependence? See, there cannot be two parameters, right? One is assistance, one is dependence. As I told, the world depends on the mutual support of each other. Sometimes I need your help. It's not. I would like. It's not dependence. It's some sort of help which I required and which everybody requires in some or the other way, right? In some or the other way. Even non-disabled also required help in some or the other way. I also required help in some or the other way. So I'm not saying that they are not completely dependent. But what I'm trying to say is that we cannot generalize the myth as well. And as Afzal told in the previous thing, it also depends on the social environment. For example, I have been privileged enough to roam around on my own on known places, but there are also certain people who are not able to do so. But I would not call it dependence, but I would call it this thing called what you call I would call it a support which is required, assistance.
Mutual assistance,
yeah.
Mutual assistance.
Yeah, that is so true, Aziz. Do you have another point to make? Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
But I will also like if I was in Delhi, right, a few months back. So I needed some help. There was some Jangpura ke paas, there is some nursery, I forgot, Sundar nursery, I forgot the name. Anyways, so that place I was supposed to go to meet my friend, and the friend helped me, and it was very mutual because I was not aware of the ways and I am not aware of the scenario and all. So it is the mutual support, right?
Yeah. So true. Thank you so much, all of you. just to sum up what has been said so far, there's been such a wide array of ways in which this myth has been deconstructed. On one hand, yeah, it is assumed that people with disabilities have to depend on others just to survive, right? Which is not true. And then you take away all agency from people with disabilities by assuming this myth, right? You don't treat them as people who are able of taking care or taking decisions for themselves or having choices or are able to make those choices. So yeah, I think as Lasya put it in the comment section perfectly, she says benevolence cannot violate consent, which I think is the summing up response to this myth for sure. All right, thank you so much, all three of you. We'll go on to the next myth now. The myth that the people with disabilities are dependent completely is completely false. And as Afzal was saying, just talk to people with disability. I think that conversation would take you much farther than just assuming. So yeah, let's go on to the next myth quickly. And the next myth that we'll be talking about is people with disability are asexual. Okay, I'm going to leave this up to you three.
Yeah. So I like to begin this discussion. So basically, in India, if you see, there is a lot of cultural taboos attached with sexuality. Also, like we have mentioned in the beginning, there is a lot of stigma, stereotype, and cultural taboos associated with disability also. And because of that, the society have a notion thinking that persons with disabilities are asexual, that very not considering the sexuality needs of persons with disabilities. But it is completely wrong. All the persons with disabilities, like any other human beings, we also have sexual desires, sexual needs, the need for the affection and love and care and all those things actually. And here you have to see actually so mainly actually there is a lot of taboo associated with this, saying that a person with a disability, if they marry and if they have if they reproduce children, then there are probability that the child will also have disability. And that is wrong actually. There are only few disabilities are hereditary. Baki there are disability, it cannot cause any disability. If a person who is in a wheelchair having a sexual relation with maybe after marriage or otherwise also, and if they have baby, there is no scientific evidence that the child will also be a wheelchair user actually, until and unless while they are having sex, if the partner is falling down and breaking their bone, until and unless it is not contagious or something like that. So the persons with the disabilities are also human beings. We also have sexual desires. And again, I would like to bring some example here. In some of the developed countries, actually, we have even in the disability rehabilitation, there is something like sex assistive therapy actually. So that is sexual need is considered as an important factor in the rehabilitation. But in current context, you all think, can we talk about sex related rehabilitation for persons with disabilities in India?
No.
What cultural scenario is doing for that? And just forget about it. Think about persons with disabilities who have severe disabilities like cerebral palsy and all, and they also have sexual need and desires, right? So you have to redefine sex is not always the peno-vaginal intercourse, right? So that is just one part of it. In fact, all the people having sexual desires, and that needs to be met actually. There are different ways for that, and we have to redefine our thinking for that, and also we have to burst our bias or preconceived notion that persons with the disabilities are asexual. It is not. It's wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish to add. I fully agree with the Afzal. So, because one thing, this is our right. As you have, I have right to food and everything. So the same way, I have right to sex. So we need the the good sex are right way as socially accepted way. We also want, but in the case of disability people, there's a lot of people neglecting from them. They are vulnerable to bad sex because they're not getting the proper way, so they are going other way, so they are vulnerable to that. So it's a create big problems. Also, they're not getting enough kind of education on that because when we giving education something sex related, we not considering the people with disability. So that's why they again going to vulnerable. So they again uh, have vulnerable to the exploitation and everything they're getting. The, in compared to non-disabled bodies, disabled bodies are more vulnerable to this kind of exploitation because of they are not getting the proper way to express their sex and the needs, and also they they also need a kind of what as Afshan mentioned, love, affection, care, everything. We also, that's the kind of recognition we also need. But the problem is that till now, even in 21st century, does the society not considering that as non-disabled bodies? They are saying we are not non-material.
And actually, it is rarely talked also. Like the sexuality needs of persons with disabilities is very rarely talked. Nobody dare to talk about it actually because of all the stigma and cultural taboos associated with.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it is very unfortunate to see that the sex education is not properly given to children with disabilities in school level and even in later this thing also. That is that's a violence actually against persons with disability. So we have to deconstruct all of those.
Even forget the children with disability. Even those having no disabilities are also not given proper sex education in the schools. Just the heteronormative stuff is feeded to us. So basically, as Afzal and Mansoor said, so basically I agree with them, and I also want to say, add few things that it doesn't mean that persons with disability do not have the intersexuality or queerness or something. Right? There are persons with disabilities who are queer, who are lesbian, who are gay, who are bisexual, who are trans as well. So we are not aware of it because the heteronormative population of persons with disability is also not very visible. So forget the queer. Even queers are not visible even in that as well. True. And so see, the asexuality and demisexuality and the grey hairs and all these spectrum, sexuality and spectrum are also there in persons with disability also. It's like there are some persons with disability who are aces, but it's not because of the disability, but it's because of their, what do you call the identity thing, which they have realized over the time that, okay, one or two or so they connect themselves with this kind of sexuality spectrum, right? So I think, see, cases are available. I mean, asexuals are there in this in non-disabled population as well, and some are there in disabled population as well. But what I wanted to make a point is that it's not the general, like it's not the generalized. The way this non-disabled population is diverse, the persons with disability population is also diverse. We are not able to see this because even the heteronormative, heterosexual persons with disability are also not very visible, right? That's why we are not able to see the asexuality spectrum or queer spectrum in persons with disability thing. But I would recommend all of you who are listening this. There is the good research and things that happen. I think Goel is doing great work in terms of research and stuff in terms of disability and sexuality. So I recommend you to go through that website. The Rising Flame is the name of her organization. She's also done some gigs with Aditya Mittal and some other stuff. So I would recommend that Nidhi Goel should be gone through. Her research, her works on sexuality and disability is very good and very. I think it will burst many of the myths and clear many of the doubts.
All right, that sounds really great. Thank you so much, all three of you. Just to summarize these points, initially, I think sexuality is not considered in general as essential. So there are these particular stereotyped ideas of who deserves to be sexual, and that usually is this able-bodied cis heterosexual man having sex with this able-bodied cis heterosexual woman. Any person who is considered capable of or who's eligible for sexuality are these people, and everybody else should just not come this way at all, not talk about sexuality at all. So yeah, that is a very large myth that does exist. They are either hypersexualized or they are completely desexualized in communities such as this.
तो मतलब इससे दिक्कत है ना कि या तो धृतराष्ट्र को 100 पुत्र होंगे या फिर तुम एसेक्सुअल हो.
Okay.
There is no middle.
That is so true. That is so true. So we are going on to the next myth now. The next myth that we will be discussing today is people with disability are always positive and motivated. All right. So I will. Who wants to take this first?
I would like to come with that. So basically, it's a very big myth. Like it's also some sort of burden. Like so, for example, that persons with disabilities are always like what you call this, very positive and motivated. It's not the case. When, for example, we also get we also have our mental health issues. And for example, when I was taking counseling sessions back in 2016, right? So one of my very good friends, so he asked me like, "See, you are very inspiring. You were very inspiring to us. Like, despite of that many challenges, you have overcome this, and still you are facing this. You have to see yourself to get motivation from." And I was like, I really appreciate that person, like to consider for his humility, but it's not the case always, right? Because see, sometimes being motivation is also so. So when you say that we are always motivated and positive, you keep some sort of burden on us, and which leads us to lie to ourselves and the society. That, oh, yeah, man, we are so positive, so motivated. It's not the case, right? So mental health issues is with everyone, right? Mental health issues is having the person with disability also. It's not. So one friend also asked, yeah, I understand that you are person. I understand that you must be facing this, and you must be intense. See, the blindness for the person with disability, is not the only reason for someone's mental health issues, right? There are also some emotional issues, some other stuff, right? Madam, I was so this is so some. Sorry. Yeah. So there are also some stuff and some other stuff because of which we face mental health issues. Because we also had our friends, as Abdul told in some myths, and we had also friends who are non-disabled. Did you know now the non-disabled knows us nowadays because I am friends with them. But those who are not friends, they live with some sort of what you call the stigma that you are always positive and inspiration. It's not the case. Like it's also some sort of burden of this stuff. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would like to just add one experience of mine. So when I was a master's student, while I was sitting for the placements. So one very popular organization came for the interview, and I sat for the post of project coordinator. Then when the moment I entered the interview in front of the interview panel, they started asking me questions about my disability instead of asking my academic things and all. Then at the end, what they told me was, we currently, this post is project coordinator, but we would like to offer you another post, like you be a motivational trainer. Then I told them that I came here for the project coordinator post, and I want that only, and I want to attend the interview for that. And like, how would you think that I would be a better person to give motivational training? As I am finding it difficult to motivate myself many of the time. So that, right? So all these things come from this myth only, that all the persons with disabilities are positive and highly motivated and things like that. It's not right. Like, we also live in very different situations. Being in a different vulnerable identities. See, I am a person with a disability. I come from a lower economic background. I come from a I am a first generation learner. I belongs to a minority community. So there are many things in the society which all the time, which is makes a lot of troubles in my life. So obviously my mental health can also be affected because of all these things, along with my disability related experiences also. So there are many things in my life which would obviously make mental health challenges to me, and I cannot be always positive and motivated. So this thing would be applied in the case of many of the persons with the disabilities. So this myth is completely wrong, and that needs to be deconstructed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansoor. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, yes. So, what is the base of thinking we are very motivated? The base of societal notion, we can't do anything. Is someone people with disability doing great things? The thought coming the background of, because their notion that they can't do anything, they are stable or something, they're just following the things like only. But after breaking that, someone is doing it, wow, that kind of things is coming. That's the main reason that thinking of people with disability are very motivated. Yes, sometimes we are motivated because of the background we are getting, the support we are getting, the faculty or the peer group, they are contributing lots to our development. We just expressing that as you expressing. That's the only thing. Because when we comparing these the thing, wow, actually Sai and Mansur doing same thing, but people just saying Mansur, wow, if we are singing same song, we are doing same song. Sometimes I made some mistake, even though I get wow, because this is everything notion behind that. They are disabled, they can't do some anything, they already depend. Previously we mentioned that in breaking that everything we are doing, those they think wow things. That's what I mentioned. I thought it was clear.
And ultimately this attitude can cause harm in our personal growth also, right? Like, so if we are lacking critical reviews or critical comments from people, like anybody, like it is very necessary to get critical feedback also, right? What we are doing. So if everybody is like following this myth and just motivating us, just saying that, oh, it was wonderful and all, instead of telling us the truth, that prevent the growth, right? So that is also a kind of violence towards persons with disabilities, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sai, I want to add one more thing.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, because sometimes it is also leading to comparison. Because if I am doing something, then people say Mansoor is doing, Afzal is doing, Aziz is doing, why can't you do that? They ask me to some other, they're not thinking what is the background we having, how we doing that, what are the support we are got. So they are not thinking about that. They just claiming that Mansoor is doing, so you also need to do. So this kind of the problem also behind this kind of conception, I think.
Yeah, that is so
As
true.
before, like the motivational the thing is like hinders our growth. It's so there is also lack of accessible infrastructure in here, and despite of that, there are certain people who are coming, and then instead of just like guiding them critically, you're hindering them growth by तुम आ जाना, you are very inspirational, done and dusted. नहीं होता ना ऐसा.
Yeah.
So, we should have some a chance to grow, right? Because when we say that हाँ तुम तो बहुत बढ़िया काम करो, like we are done, like so our growth hinders, right? So basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I'll actually just summing up from what is being said. Usually, what happens is कि first of all, you have these assumptions about what are the abilities or what are the capabilities of persons living with disability, and they are usually also reinforced with myths such as people with disability are dependent and people with disability can't do anything by themselves. So whenever there is any achievement by a person with disability, then it is met with toxic positivity of, oh my god, you're so inspirational and you're so motivated, and myths like that. And at the same time, it does not, the very fact that people with disability are living lives itself is seen as something that is supposed to be congratulated or commended, while at the same time not addressing the fact that uh, there are inhibitions to this toxic positivity. When somebody comes and tells you about how inspirational, motivational, and strong you are, they are not addressing the vulnerabilities that you face in everyday life, in living, in accessibility, and so on. That is so true. Okay, so this myth is busted. We will actually go on to the next myth immediately. And we are running a little short on time, so I would request all our facilitators to keep it a little shorter this time. Okay. The next myth that we will be addressing is a ramp and a braille is enough to make something accessible. You know, I've just realized this is an important myth, so I think I'm going to allow around 10 minutes, 6-7 minutes for this. So yeah, go ahead.
See, first of all, I would like to start the discussion about what is accessibility and what is accessibility issue. Accessibility issue happen when there is a barrier, right? So this barrier can be two types. One can be infrastructural barriers that we all talk about. This ramp, braille, and all those things comes under infrastructural barriers. Then again, the second thing is there, and that is the most important thing, that is attitudinal barrier. That can create more accessibility problem. The way we the attitude which we show against a person with a disability, right? So even if you have like suppose like in one office, like if I am an employee there and there is ramp, there is braille and everything, but the officer is not letting me go around alone, and they think they're like, Arey, you don't go, if you go like you might fall down and you will get hurt, right? So this is the attitudinal barrier. So first you have to break that attitudinal barriers, right? So then comes the physical barrier, infrastructural barrier thing. So that is one. And also when you design these things, no, braille and ramp is not just the maximum of accessibility, because we live in a very complex situation, right? So in all the situation we require different kind of accessibility. We are in need of different kind of accessibility. Even if you take traveling, even if you take writing an exam, right? So recently I'll just give one example. One of my friend who studies in 10th standard, and he's a person with visual impairment. He do almost all his academic work on his laptop. When he was participating in one state level competition, he wanted to write his essay on his laptop only, but the state missionaries organizers didn't let him write. He's like, they're like, you take a scribe, a person to write your essay, you tell them. Then he is like, he's not confident, or he's much comfortable to write his own on his computer, but the attitudinal barriers of the organizers didn't let him do that. So this is very important point to consider. And also, like, you have to ask persons with the disabilities, when you create this accessibility measures, you have to ask or consult the person with the disability what they require and what the exact need is. Thank you.
Abhi, few days back there was a I think a year or 2 years back, एक चला था माहौल कि every government officer should be having a ramp. This was very good, right? I appreciate that. But उसकी वजह से दिक्कत क्या आ रहा था? What's the problem is that you have ramp. So I belong to Ahmedabad. So basically Ahmedabad is having this BRTS cutting for public transport, right? It's a blue bus rapid, like there is a bus rapid. So every BRTS stand, if somebody is having, I hope if somebody is there from Ahmedabad or happen to be in Ahmedabad. Anyway, so in Ahmedabad, every BRTS stand have this ramp and this. So what happened? So one of my friends dropped me to this one side of the area, and I was about to, like, मैं गया ऊपर, I went there ramp chada, or the ticket window from where you enter was closed. I was called I told them कि क्या करो, तो बोले तुम उस तरफ से आ जाओ. Means so there are two BRDA sides, like there is eastern side facing and one is western side, right? So I went from western side. So he was saying कि तुम उस तरफ से आ जाओ, मतलब eastern side से, right? So I went through that and all. So this is me who could walk on his own and who had his some. But imagine the situation of senior citizens or those who are using wheelchairs. Because for going from eastern side to western door, you have to go to the track from where bus is coming or bus is going, right? So that's a bloody that's the risk. So I was like, I'm okay, कि हाँ हो गया. After that I complained, I raised a complaint with the help of someone, and it got resolved and all. But अभी भी, so another experience what I would like to say is that कि लोगों से braille is enough for visually challenged to make this thing accessible. Most of the ATMs are having braille signage now. Most of the, including the private public sector banks, but they are not accessible. You will ask me how. So I raised this issue with one of my regional officers. I told them that, see, this ATM is not accessible. I have to depend on someone to use this. So they are saying like, see, braille to hai, but you will be able to know. Yeah, braille to hai, but the thing is that through braille you will get to know that this is where you have to enter your card. This is where you have to collect your cash from, and this is where these are the numbers. But कौन सा number कब दबाना है? Where you have to enter the card, where you have to collect the cash. How would we know that? Because whichever is on screen doesn't reflect on in braille, right? The things which are written on screen are not reflected on in braille. So how would I say that I have to press one to withdraw my amount and all? So for that they need to have audio ATM facility. So I would recommend that there are some stuff like most of the ATMs, my few ATMs are having this audio thing. So by entering the headphone jack into this, if the ATM speaks, then only the ATM is accessible. Otherwise, the braille doesn't make ATM accessible. Okay, another experience I would like to mention. Trains में there is the numbers are written and all. So एक बार ही I was like about to ask कि भाई कहाँ पे लिखा होता है, मतलब braille में I was about to ask that one person that I needed to like which is my bus number, where is my bus number. So otherwise you go with the mathematical stuff like क्योंकि 8 का वो पूरा टेबल लेके चलो 8 का होता है, मतलब अगर इस तरफ 72 है तो you go by 64 56. This is the mathematics which I use. वहाँ पे braille था इस जगह पे, पर वो कहाँ पे था? You know the side lower berth and side upper berth. Usually side upper berth is not given to visually challenged or disabled people, but I was given the side upper. I don't mind like because so personally I don't mind. So वहाँ पे उसकी जो wall है ना, in the wall beside that, the wall which was facing the window of this lower, middle and upper berth, on that wall, the numbers of that side upper and side of lower berth numbers were written 51 and 52. Right. Now you imagine, इतना ऊपर है, even if you have given the braille, is it accessible? I am sure it is not, because you don't reach. So, because सबसे पहले तो the person will not be reaching to the side upper berth. I mean, or even if वो गया भी, then also the person will not be able to will not be noticing this thing. Otherwise, अगर कोई मेरी तरह है कि जिसको मतलब सराउंडिंग को स्कैन करने का आदत है by touching. So this is crazy, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Mansoor, do you want to add?
Yeah, I fully agree with Afzal and Aziz. I just want to add about we want to think about the universal design. We are not asking for design for Mansoor, design for Afzal, design for Sai, nothing not like. At least in public places, we just make a design for everyone. Even aged people is coming, some disabled people coming, visually impaired people coming, or non-disabled bodies coming. Everyone can access. So, for example, there is a toilet, everyone can access. There is any kind of the dining hall, everyone can access. We need to something designed like that. Not always the time are changing. Always thinking about value. Now we are using technology. So no, we need to think beyond that because we kind of only for designing for kind of only for disabled people. It's a kind of marginalization also. We also want to think about kind of universal design. Every place, every can access. That I want to. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would like to add one more thing in that, see, accessibility is not only about ramp and rail, it is also about screen readers, right? Because I've just recently, a few weeks back, I've launched a campaign regarding making Swiggy accessible, because Swiggy is not at all accessible now with TalkBack, the screen reader which most of the visually challenged people use. I'm not aware of this iPhones, I think, but most of the visually challenged use, and so many of the visually challenged use Android, and the Swiggy, it is not accessible with the screen reader. So you can consider signing this petition as well on change.org/Swiggy. It's
Yeah.
not
And
promotion.
also I just want to add some more thing. Actually, Indian currency, the latest currency which is releasing, is almost all the currencies are in same size, so it's very difficult for us to recognize those currencies. And when it comes to application, the famous application for the dating and all, Tinder, that is not accessible for persons with visual impairment. It is not screen reader accessible. So when we are designing all those things, we completely forget about the persons with visual impairment or persons with disabilities or persons who have certain requirements actually. So we are making only considering the able-bodied requirement or able-bodied needs actually. So those things we have to consider much, I guess. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. I'll
And
just.
it's very ironical that after the launch of Accessible India campaign, currency has become inaccessible.
That's so
The
true.
irony, brutal irony.
Also, I'll just to sum up all the ways in which this has been deconstructed as a myth. I think I'll sum it up with Mansoor's point, which was about universal design, how it is necessary that whenever you're talking about accessibility, you don't go around ticking boxes of, oh, disabled physically, check, oh, disabled visually, check. You know, you don't
Yes.
go around ticking boxes, but instead talk about how it can be most accessible. Because whenever we talk about accessibility in terms of infrastructure or design, it always comes down to, oh, but how many people will use it, right? And it is always considered as a how do you call it, accessibility to everyone is considered as part of a design which is separate. For example, there will be stairs. On the side of the stairs, one small ramp will be there.
Yeah.
Now, whether that ramp is accessible also, nobody knows. The ramp has to be a particular angle. The ramp cannot be too steep and things like that, which nobody takes care of, right? So design in that way is also sometimes very flawed. And I just wanted to add one thing over here. I think this is an issue that is universal for a lot of things. And I'm going to speak from one experience particularly that I have. And that is in police training. Now, we realized that the hand pull-ups that were there for women were the same size as men. And because women in general have smaller hands, right, genetically, it was difficult for them to hold on to that bar and do a pull-up. And when we reduced the size of that bar handle, we actually had much more percentage of women passing those physical exams than before. So similarly, this is an issue that has, I think, globally there in a lot of marginalities that are experienced. People don't think of universal design. People think of very specific ways of looking at design. And they always think of it as an afterthought instead of it being the central aspect of what accessibility should mean or good design should mean. All right. So thanks to that, we have come to an end.
Before taking questions and answers, I just wanted to conclude this thing by saying that, see, consider normalizers instead of sympathizing or glorifying. It will help us and it will help you.
Yes.
Normalizers.
Thank you so much, Aziz. That's so true. Now we will just be taking questions, but we actually don't have any questions at present. So if there's any other points that all three of you would like to add, otherwise I have a few questions that I can ask.
Yes, I would like to add something actually. So there is one more myth. I mean, certain things we need to talk about. First of all, the political participation of persons with disabilities actually.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
yesterday, me and Mansoor was discussing actually how many representatives are there from persons with the disability community. When you see the parliament or like whichever places you take actually. So there is no proper percentage of representation for persons with disability in these decision making bodies. So that needs to be considered. We are not just person with disabilities alone. We have, I mean, this is another point actually. I am a Muslim, I am a person with disability, I am a person who is from a vernacular language background, and many intersectional identities are there like from my side. So so it is very important for to have a political space actually, because now already now the disability discourse is happening, but it is happening alone. It's a standalone discussion. So I would want it to be in the socio-political and economic sphere actually. So this disability discourse, we have to bring it to the socio-political and economic context, I
Great,
guess.
great.
Yeah.
I fully agree with Asel that because we are always thinking about that. We don't have any representation in anywhere in decision making bodies or in political parties representing anything we not have. So where we address our issues, we want to look on that.
So now the problem is that the persons who are making decisions are this temporarily able-bodied or non-disabled persons, and they are making decisions for persons with disabilities. Like we have discussed the accessibility ka thing. When accessibility measures making, only this non-disabled person is making accessibility measures for a person with a disability. How come he will be? How come he can understand the requirement of me as a person with visual impairment until and unless he is not experiencing it, right? So the decision making bodies or the policy making bodies, there should be a proper representation of persons with disabilities. Now I think in this new era we have to claim our representation in these bodies, I guess. That is what the disability discourse needs to go. That is where it needs to go. Yeah.
Great.
Also, like imagine that there are so see as far as the intersectionality is concerned, if there is some differently abled person who is like cerebral palsy or wheelchair user, visually challenged, or not able to, is not given enough uh, education to for mobility and other stuff, right? That person is Dalit or tribal. That person is coming from the hinterland of this country, rural area where internet hasn't reached yet. And that person is person with disability, and that person is woman or trans person. Now you can imagine the vulnerability of that person, right? अभी जो the person with disability उनको major जो many things are coming, the discourse disability right discourse are happening. It's also coming from very urban spaces. Like I'm not saying that I'm not accusing anyone for anything, but like the many people who are coming from urban spaces, and I am also able to speak this because I'm coming from a very privileged background, right? Privileged in the sense that I have been able to get some education. I was given good education, but there are thousands of people where intersectionality in persons with disability is not in a discourse that much. It should be in discourse because there are many other people who are like the coming from hinterland, who are females, who are just coming from a marginalized communities, do not have access to education. Forget this, like forget this education and speaking English and all, but even they don't have even access to outside their home, right? The vicinity of the home. So this is something which should be brought into discourse. The intersectionality of persons with disability, the gender thing, the caste and class thing in persons with disability thing. These things should be given into discourse, which are not secular discourse, which are not discussed. But as I said in the fourth myth, asexuality wala, the persons with disability as a term, generic term, are also not in discourse in mainstream. So forget this intersectionality discourse. That we have to bring in, I guess.
Yeah, so true. Also, like, just to add this here, one of the major taglines that people in the disability movement have used is that nothing about us without us historically. And I think that applies very much to the way in which either policy making or perspective building on people with disabilities is taken up in the context of India. Um, Over here, I would just like to thank all of you for participating, Mansoor, Afzal, and Aziz. It has been absolutely delightful to have interacted with you today. This was a very informative session, and I hope that all the people who did attend are taking something back with them, taking some amount of perspective and maybe some busting of biases with them while they're going away from here. I'll just like to invite Lasya on board if she has any comments or
No
announcements.
comments, I just left, but thank you so much, Mansoor, Afsal, and Aziz. It was great listening to you guys, and I think I personally learned a lot, and so did so many other people. Have been seeing WhatsApp group chats and chats here. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts, truly. This was really, like, personally very informative. And we hope to connect again for Belong events in the future. And thank you so much, everybody else, for attending and staying with this conversation. We will hold the next Bust Your Bias session 2 Saturdays later, like not the next Saturday, but the one after that. Yeah, so thank you so much. Thanks, Sai, and everybody else. And you can follow Belong on our social media. We are on @the House of Belong on Instagram, @the House of Belong, @House of Belong on Twitter, and just Belong on Facebook. Belong is with a double G. So yeah, please come, and please come to our literature festival. Also, we left the link here. It's, if somebody missed it, it's belonglitfest.com. BELONGG litfest.com. And yeah, all of you all, thanks so much for being here today and busting these, sticking with us while busting these very important and clearly myths that needed addressing urgently. Thanks, Sai.
All right. Okay, thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you for tolerating us for a long time. I mean, me, not us.
Love tolerating you, Aziz. You were awesome.
You
It
guys
was
are
great.
great. There was no toleration.
At all.
It was
Bye.
great.
Bye.
And Mansoor, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Afzal.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for considering this discourse into this. So we'll catch up
We hope to
sometime.
engage more eventually. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome. Bye. Bye. Take care.
Ending the session. Yeah. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye bye.